First Contact and the Toaster Revelation. Humanity had always dreamed of exploring the stars, imagining grand alien civilizations, towering spaceships, and advanced technologies beyond human comprehension. What they hadn't anticipated, however, was just how ordinary their first contact with alien life would be. It wasn't the kind of dramatic event immortalized in movies or books. No grand fleets appearing in Earth's orbit, no world-shattering revelations. Instead, it was a group of young alien children, barely more than toddlers by their species standards, playing a game of galactic mischief. For centuries, Earth had been an unnoticed backwater in a vast and bustling galactic community. While humanity was still struggling with steam engines, electricity, and space exploration, the universe beyond was thriving with strange and wondrous life. These alien children would buzz by Earth for fun, sometimes abducting a human here and there for the thrill of it, like how a child might collect bugs in a jar. They left strange trinkets behind, often by accident, devices that Earth's scientists either dismissed as unexplainable or failed to notice altogether. Then came the day everything changed. It wasn't a monumental discovery at first. One fateful night, a small UFO had been tracked by amateur astronomers flying erratically over Earth. It wasn't the sleek, awe-inspiring craft often depicted in science fiction. It was, as humanity would later discover, a glorified toy, a flying contraption controlled by a mischievous alien child, accidentally left behind in the rush of intergalactic playtime. The UFO had crash-landed in the dense forests of the Pacific Northwest, where a group of curious hikers stumbled upon the wreckage. Among the debris, they found a strange object, a toaster, or at least it looked like a toaster. It was sleek, shiny, and covered in alien markings. Laughing at their bizarre discovery, they took it home, unaware they were holding something that would eventually change the course of human history. The toaster found its way to a small, independent research lab, where a group of underfunded engineers and scientists toyed with it. The object was odd, with buttons that seemed unnecessary and compartments that didn't serve any purpose at first glance. However, when they tried to disassemble it, they discovered something shocking. The inner workings of the device weren't mechanical in any human sense. They were far more advanced, an intricate array of energy storage systems and computational technologies wrapped in a casing that resembled a common household appliance. For months, the scientists experimented with the toaster, slowly piecing together its capabilities. They discovered that, when plugged into a power source, it could generate an unprecedented amount of energy, far more than any Earth-bound technology. More importantly, it could store and release this energy in ways humanity had never considered. It wasn't just a toaster, it was a breakthrough, a window into an entirely new realm of possibilities. Word of the discovery spread quickly through scientific circles. Government agencies got involved, and soon the world's best minds were dissecting the toaster in secret labs, trying to understand its technology. They theorized that if a mere child's toy could harness this much power, what kind of technology did the rest of the galaxy possess? And more importantly, how could humanity replicate it? The answer came slowly but surely. After years of study, reverse engineering, and countless failed attempts, humanity began to make progress. They called it the toaster standard, a humorous nod to the humble beginnings of their discovery. The alien tech didn't just revolutionize energy production, it gave birth to a new era of human advancement. Humanity began creating ships, weapons, and devices that far exceeded their previous capabilities, all based on the principles discovered within that first alien toaster. But the toaster wasn't just a discovery. It was a symbol of what humans had always done best: take something simple, something overlooked, and transform it into something extraordinary. Where other species might have dismissed the technology as a mere toy, humanity saw potential. They saw a path forward, a way to compete in a universe where they were outclassed in almost every way. As humanity's fleet of toaster-powered ships grew, so did their ambition. They were no longer content to sit on the sidelines of the galactic stage. Armed with their newfound technology, they began to explore, to push the boundaries of what was possible. They built spacecraft that were functional, practical, and above all, deadly. While alien ships were sleek, elegant, and full of bells and whistles, humanity's fleet was different, sturdy, efficient, and driven by raw, unyielding power. They weren't trying to impress anyone. They were trying to survive and, if necessary, win. In the years that followed, humanity's presence in space became harder to ignore. At first, the other species laughed. The newcomers were a joke, a primitive race playing with technology they barely understood. But that laughter quickly turned to concern as human ships grew faster, stronger, and more formidable. The galactic community had underestimated humanity's capacity for adaptation, innovation, and resilience. What had started as a prank by alien children was now evolving into something much more serious. Then came the day when the aliens decided they had enough. A small fleet from the Galactic Council was dispatched to Earth, with orders to put an end to humanity's meddling once and for all. The Council was made up of various species, all of whom viewed humans as a minor nuisance, something to be contained before it became a real problem. Their mission was simple: force humanity to surrender their new technology and retreat back to the safety of their home planet. The aliens expected little resistance. After all, in their eyes, humanity was still primitive, and their toaster-based technology was laughable at best. But they were about to learn a hard lesson. As the alien fleet approached Earth, they were met with a surprise. Human ships, crude as they were, moved out from the shadows of Earth's moons and planets, blocking the aliens' path. These ships weren't sleek or beautiful. They were little more than steel boxes in space, armed with every mad idea humanity had ever conceived. Railguns, plasma burners, and mag bottle bombs were strapped to every available surface. If it worked, it was built. If it didn't work, it was tested until it did. Humanity's fleet may not have been pretty, but it was effective. And thus, the stage was set for humanity's first real battle in space. A battle born not out of desire for conquest or glory, but out of the sheer determination to survive and thrive in a universe that saw them as little more than a joke. The war, it seemed, had started with a toaster. But as the first human ships powered up their weapons, it was clear that this was no ordinary kitchen appliance. This was the dawn of something far greater, a battle that would echo through the stars and cement humanity's place in the galaxy. The first battle of the Toaster War. The alien fleet advanced with confidence, expecting an easy victory. Their ships were sleek, shining beacons of intergalactic engineering, a stark contrast to the human fleet's rough, industrial appearance. The aliens had underestimated humanity's resolve, their ingenuity, and the lengths they would go to protect what they had built. The humans were, after all, the species that had weaponized a toaster. Admiral Marcus Tay, a battle-hardened leader with a storied career in Earth's newly formed Space Navy, stood at the helm of the Ironclad, the largest and most heavily armed ship in the fleet. He was a short man, barely 5'2", but every inch of him radiated authority. His ancestors had sailed the world when most civilizations were still in their infancy, and he carried that legacy with him into space. As he stared at the massive alien vessels approaching, his jaw set in a determined line. "They've never fought a human before," he muttered under his breath, a cold smirk playing on his lips. Around him, the crew of the Ironclad worked feverishly, finalizing battle preparations. Their weapons weren't conventional. Nothing in humanity's arsenal was anymore. The toaster technology had revolutionized warfare, giving birth to railguns that could accelerate projectiles to near light speeds, plasma weapons capable of melting through reinforced hulls, and energy shields that could absorb massive amounts of incoming fire. The alien fleet, led by a high-ranking Galactic Council ambassador, appeared on the comm screen. The ambassador was a dark gray, furry creature with an elongated snout and glistening black eyes. Its expression was one of condescension, and its voice was a guttural growl. "Humans of Sol 3, You are hereby ordered by the authority of the Galactic Council to surrender your stolen technology and cease all further incursions into Council space. You will remain within the orbit of your home planet, under constant surveillance, until a formal judgment is made regarding your transgressions. Failure to comply will result in immediate and overwhelming retaliation. The Admiral's face remained calm as he gestured to his communications officer to open a channel. "Greetings, Ambassador," Admiral Tay began, his voice level but laced with underlying steel. "It's nice of you to finally introduce yourselves properly. We've grown rather tired of the sneaking, the abductions, and the thefts that your people seem to find so amusing. Unfortunately for you, humanity doesn't take kindly to threats." The ambassador's fur rippled in what was likely frustration or disdain, but it continued, ignoring the Admiral's jab. "You misunderstand your position, human. We are not here to negotiate. Surrender now or face the consequences." Admiral Tay's smirk widened as he glanced at his tactical officer. A nod was all it took to signal the human fleet into action. From the shadows of Earth's moons, the human ships surged forward. What had once seemed like scattered, disorganized formations of steel boxes now moved with terrifying precision. They were built for one purpose: to fight. As soon as the human fleet engaged, the airwaves filled with the sharp sounds of battle. The humans' crude-looking vessels unleashed a torrent of firepower, railgun projectiles streaking through the vacuum of space, plasma beams cutting through the blackness like molten knives, and energy shields flaring with bright flashes as they absorbed alien fire. The alien ambassador's eyes widened in disbelief as he watched the chaotic dance of battle unfold on his screens. "Impossible," he hissed, his voice cracking. "They were supposed to be primitive. This wasn't supposed to happen. But it was happening." The alien ships, though more advanced in appearance, were designed for a different kind of warfare, one that relied on careful maneuvering, superior technology, and precise tactics. They were elegant machines built for enemies who played by the same rules. Humanity didn't play by those rules. Their ships were bristling with weapons that had no business being in space, with strategies developed from centuries of ground warfare and naval combat. The result was a brutal, unrelenting assault that overwhelmed the alien fleet. One of the smaller human ships, the Tempest, maneuvered with surprising agility for its bulk, cutting through the void like a predator on the hunt. Its railguns fired in rapid succession, and alien ships exploded in bright bursts of fire and metal. On board, Captain Sarah Langley gave quick, precise orders, her sharp mind calculating the best angles of attack as she exploited every weakness in the alien formation. Her crew had trained relentlessly for this moment, and their efforts were paying off in spades. Meanwhile, the Ironclad was holding its ground against the larger ships of the alien fleet. Its thick armor, made from Earth's strongest alloys, absorbed direct hits that would have obliterated other vessels. With its powerful plasma cannons and railguns, it returned fire with devastating force. On the alien side, chaos reigned. They were used to controlling the battlefield, their superior technology and tactics usually enough to subdue any opposition. But the humans were different. They didn't fight with finesse or grace. They fought like cornered animals, determined to survive at any cost. One alien commander, watching the battle from his command seat, barked orders to his crew, trying to salvage what remained of his squadron. But his sleek, elegant ship was no match for the raw, brutal power of the human fleet. He watched in horror as a human railgun projectile slammed into his ship's energy shield, punching through it like it was made of paper. Moments later, the ship's hull exploded in a brilliant flash of light, taking the commander and his crew with it. In the midst of the chaos, the alien ambassador, still on the comm screen, finally lost his composure. This is madness. How could you? Welcome to Earth, Admiral Tay interrupted, his voice cold and unwavering. We play to win. With that, the communication line was cut, and the battle raged on. Despite their initial shock, the alien fleet wasn't without its own strengths. Their ships were faster, more maneuverable, and their weapons, while not as brutish as the humans, were devastating when they found their mark. Several human ships took heavy damage, their hulls rupturing and venting atmosphere into space. But for every human ship that fell, 3 alien ships were destroyed in return. As the battle wore on, the alien fleet began to falter. Their disciplined formations broke down as they realized the futility of fighting against an enemy that didn't care about the rules of engagement. Humanity's ships moved like wrecking balls through the alien lines, smashing everything in their path. At the heart of the human fleet, Admiral Tay watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. The alien fleet had underestimated them from the start, and now they were paying the price. This wasn't just a skirmish, it was a message. Humanity would not be intimidated, and they would not back down. Not now, not ever. Finally, after hours of brutal combat, the remnants of the alien fleet turned tail and fled. The surviving ships warped away, their engines blazing as they retreated to the safety of Council space. The humans, battered but victorious, watched them go. On board the ironclad, Admiral Tay stood in silence for a moment, staring at the empty space where the alien fleet had been. The crew, exhausted but triumphant, erupted into cheers, celebrating their first victory in what was sure to be a long and grueling war. But Admiral Tay knew better than to celebrate just yet. This was only the beginning. "Get me the Council's frequency," he ordered, turning to his communications officer. A moment later, the alien ambassador's face reappeared on the comm screen, now a mixture of shock and barely contained fury. "We'll be back," the ambassador growled, his voice low and dangerous. "You haven't won. Not yet." Admiral Tay's eyes narrowed as he leaned forward. "Then we'll be waiting." With that, the screen went dark once more, and the human fleet began to regroup, preparing for the next stage of the war that had begun with a toaster. The aftermath and the Council's response. The adrenaline of battle still surged through the veins of every human on board their ships, but the reality of what had just occurred began to settle in. The stars, once the distant dream of poets and astronomers, had now become the battlefield for humanity's survival. The human fleet, crude, battle-scarred, but victorious, floated amidst the debris of alien vessels, a testament to the raw power of human innovation. Inside the command center of the ironclad, Admiral Marcus Tay stood before the large observation window, his gaze fixed on the void beyond. Around him, the crew bustled with post-battle activity, tending to damaged systems, checking casualties, and preparing reports for Earth. The mood on the ship was triumphant, but there was a heaviness in the air, an awareness that while this battle had been won, the war was far from over. Admiral Tay took a deep breath, knowing that the Galactic Council would not take this defeat lightly. Humanity had shown their hand, and the Council would come back with a vengeance. Still, for now, Earth had its first real victory in space, and it had come from a toaster, an ironic twist that Tay couldn't help but chuckle about. "Captain Langley," Tay called, his voice breaking through the murmurs of the control room. Captain Sarah Langley, the formidable commander of the Tempest, approached. She had been instrumental in the victory, her ship's relentless attacks crippling several key alien vessels. Though small in stature, Langley commanded respect with her sharp mind and unyielding determination. "Admiral," she greeted, her voice steady, though a small smile played on her lips. "I take it we sent a message loud and clear." Tay nodded, but his expression remained grim. "We did, but they're not going to take it lying down. They'll come back, and they'll come back stronger." Langley folded her arms, her smile fading. "We expected that, but we proved we're not an easy target." "True," Tay replied, glancing once more at the wreckage of alien ships floating like dead stars. "But now, we need to prepare for what's next. This isn't the end, it's just the beginning." The Strategic Council. Back on Earth, news of the battle spread like wildfire. In the highest circles of government and military, there was a palpable mixture of relief and unease. Humanity had held its own against an alien threat, but they had also drawn the full attention of the Galactic Council, a powerful and ancient organization that spanned hundreds of star systems. The Council was not accustomed to being defied, especially by a species as young and relatively primitive as humanity. In the war room of the United Earth Strategic Council, a group of the planet's brightest minds had gathered to discuss the situation. The room was dimly lit, with holographic displays flickering to life, showing detailed maps of the solar system, schematics of alien ships, and reports from the battle. General Aaron Mendez, a towering figure with decades of military experience, stood at the head of the table. His sharp eyes scanned the room, where scientists, strategists, and military officers sat in tense silence. "We've won the first round," Mendez began, his voice calm but authoritative. "But we all know what's coming next. The Galactic Council will regroup, and they'll bring the full force of their military down on us. This wasn't a battle to them. It was a warning. A warning that we've ignored." Dr. Emily Carter, one of Earth's leading scientists in alien technology, leaned forward. "We've made significant progress in understanding their tech, but we're still behind in many areas. The toaster may have given us a head start, but we're going to need more than luck if we want to survive what's coming." Mendez nodded grimly. "We can't rely on brute force alone. We need to think smarter, not just harder. We need to take their technology and push it further, adapt it to our needs." "We've already begun that process," Dr. Carter said. "We're experimenting with advanced energy shielding and propulsion systems, but it's not enough. We need to find a way to strike back before they overwhelm us with numbers and firepower." As the Council continued their discussions, the mood in the room darkened. The weight of the task ahead was clear to everyone present. Humanity had made its stand, but the true storm was still on the horizon. In a distant star system, light years from Earth, the Galactic Council convened in their grand chamber, a massive structure suspended in the vacuum of space, surrounded by thousands of ships from hundreds of species. The Council was an ancient institution, governing much of the known galaxy with an iron grip. Their decisions were final, and their power was absolute. Today, they were gathered to discuss an unprecedented event, a defeat at the hands of an upstart species, humans. The Council's chamber was filled with representatives from dozens of alien races, each more bizarre and magnificent than the last. Towering insectoids, serpentine beings with shimmering scales, creatures with multiple eyes and limbs, each species held their own seat of power, and they all murmured in disbelief at the recent developments. At the center of the chamber stood High Counselor Varnax, a tall, reptilian figure with shimmering purple skin and a crown of spines along his head. His voice echoed through the chamber as he addressed the assembly. "Fellow councillors," Varnax began, his tone measured but filled with quiet fury. "We have received troubling reports from the Sol system. The species known as humans, primitive, isolated, and insignificant, has somehow managed to defeat one of our fleets in open combat." A ripple of disbelief passed through the assembly. How could such a backward species have achieved such a feat? Their victory, Varnax continued, was not the result of superior technology or strategy. It was, as we feared, the product of their reckless use of our own stolen technology. They have taken a simple device, an energy storage unit, and turned it into a weapon of mass destruction. They have weaponized the very essence of our society's peaceful technology. One of the council members, a hulking creature with 4 arms and glowing eyes, spoke up. "This cannot be allowed to stand. If these humans are allowed to continue their experiments with our technology, they could become a threat to the entire council. They must be dealt with swiftly and decisively." Varnax nodded in agreement. Indeed, the humans are a dangerous anomaly, one that must be corrected. We cannot allow their defiance to spread. If they are willing to use their newfound power against us, then we must remind them of their place in the galactic order. The council chamber buzzed with agreement. It was decided. The humans would be made an example of. Their fledgling fleet would be crushed, their planet brought to heel, and their people reminded of their inferiority. "Prepare the second fleet," Varnax ordered. "We will not make the same mistake twice. This time, we will send a force that will ensure humanity's total surrender." Back on Earth, the message from the Galactic Council had been received, a formal declaration of war. The news spread like wildfire, and the world reacted with a mix of fear and determination. Humanity had long feared the day they would encounter a superior alien force, but now that day had come, and they had already drawn blood. Admiral Tay returned to Earth to meet with the United Earth Strategic Council. The atmosphere was tense, but there was no room for despair. Humanity had no choice but to fight. In the days that followed, the world mobilized for war on an unprecedented scale. Factories were converted to produce weapons and spacecraft. Scientists worked around the clock to develop new technologies, pushing the limits of what was possible. Every able-bodied person was prepared for what was to come. The human fleet, battered from their first battle, began repairs and upgrades. The lessons learned from their victory were quickly implemented into new designs. Engineers worked tirelessly to improve the toaster-based energy systems, finding ways to store more power and enhance their weapons. But it wasn't just about ships and guns. Humanity needed a plan, a strategy to counter the overwhelming force that was sure to come. They couldn't win by sheer strength alone. They would need to outthink, outmaneuver, and outlast their enemies. Admiral Tay stood before his officers, his voice resolute as he outlined their next steps. "We won't win this war by playing by their rules," he said. "We'll win it by playing by ours. We're humans, we adapt, we innovate, and we survive. The Galactic Council doesn't know what's coming for them." The calm before the storm. The stars glittered coldly against the endless black of space, a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing within the human fleet. Repairs were underway, ships docked at makeshift space stations hastily constructed from recycled materials and alien tech. Inside every vessel, the tension was palpable. Humanity had earned a brief reprieve, but they knew it wouldn't last. The Galactic Council, humiliated by their defeat, would return, and they would bring everything they had. Admiral Marcus Tay stood at the helm of the ironclad, staring out at the void. He knew that this moment, the calm before the storm, was critical. It wasn't enough to merely hold their ground. They had to do more than just survive. They had to adapt, to innovate, to outsmart an enemy that was technologically superior in nearly every way. Humanity's first victory had been a testament to their resilience, but the next battle would determine their fate. The ship's comm buzzed, pulling the Admiral from his thoughts. "Admiral Tay, incoming transmission from Earth," came the calm voice of his communications officer. "Patch it through," Tay replied, turning toward the command console. The face of General Aaron Mendez appeared on the screen. His expression was as stern as ever, but there was an edge of urgency in his voice. "Admiral, we've received intelligence confirming what we feared. The Galactic Council is preparing to send a second fleet, larger, more advanced, and fully prepared for battle. Our analysts estimate they'll arrive in less than 2 weeks." Tay's jaw tightened, though he'd been expecting this news. What's their projected strength? Massive. They've mobilized a coalition of their strongest species. This isn't just a punitive strike, it's a full-scale invasion force. We're looking at thousands of ships, all armed with the latest in alien tech. They won't make the same mistake twice. Tay took a deep breath. Understood. We'll be ready. But even as he said the words, he knew that readiness wasn't enough. The human fleet had been pushed to its limits in the last battle, and the ships were barely holding together. Repairs were ongoing, but they needed more time. Time that they didn't have. "What's the plan, General?" Tay asked, already bracing himself for the hard decisions ahead. "We're mobilizing everything we've got," Mendez replied. "Factories are running non-stop, producing new ships, weapons, and defenses. Scientists are working around the clock to enhance the toaster tech, trying to squeeze every bit of energy and firepower out of it. But it's not enough. was still outgunned. Tay nodded grimly. We need an edge, something they won't expect. That's why I'm sending Dr. Emily Carter and her team up to you, Mendes said. They've been working on something big. But it's risky. If it works, it could turn the tide. If it doesn't, he trailed off, leaving the implications hanging in the air. We'll take whatever we can get, Tay replied. Send them up as soon as possible. Across the solar system, humanity was mobilizing for war on a scale never before seen. Factories on Earth, Mars, and the Moon churned out ships and weapons in a relentless stream. Orbital shipyards bustled with activity as workers welded together hulls and engineers scrambled to install the latest upgrades to the toaster-based technology that had given humanity its first taste of victory. Dr. Emily Carter and her team of scientists arrived on the ironclad a few days later, bringing with them crates of equipment, data, and prototypes. The corridors of the ship buzzed with activity as the crew prepared for the impending invasion. Soldiers ran drills, engineers made last-minute adjustments, and the atmosphere was thick with a mix of dread and determination. Carter, a brilliant but no-nonsense scientist with a sharp mind and a reputation for thinking outside the box, wasted no time getting to work. She was greeted by Admiral Tay in the command center, where the two exchanged quick pleasantries before diving into the details of her latest project. You've been working on something special, I hear, Tay said as they made their way through the ship's research lab. Carter nodded, her eyes gleaming with excitement despite the grim circumstances. We've made some breakthroughs with the toaster tech. It turns out that the energy storage capabilities of the original device were just the beginning. The aliens were using it for simple tasks like heating bread, but we found ways to amplify the energy output tenfold. Tay raised an eyebrow. Amplify it how? Carter led him to a workbench where her team was huddled around a device that looked like a heavily modified version of the original alien toaster. It was bulkier, with wires and conduits running out of it and connecting to various power sources. We're calling it the quantum pulse generator, Carter explained. It's a new kind of weapon, one that doesn't rely on conventional energy blasts or projectiles. Instead, it generates a focused quantum pulse that disrupts the molecular structure of anything it touches. Ships, weapons, shields, it doesn't matter. This thing will cut through them like butter. Tay stared at the device, impressed. Sounds like a game changer. It could be, Carter said, her tone cautious. But it's untested. We haven't had time to properly run simulations, let alone field tests. We're working with unknown alien tech here. There's always a risk. In the depths of space, the Galactic Council's Second Fleet was already on the move. Thousands of warships, each more advanced and deadly than anything humanity had ever faced, streaked through the void on a direct course for Earth. Leading the fleet was High Counselor Varnax, the reptilian commander whose defeat in the first battle had been a personal humiliation. He was determined to rectify that mistake and crush the humans once and for all. Varnax sat in the command chair of his flagship, the Invincible, a massive vessel bristling with weapons and shield generators. His cold, predatory eyes scanned the holographic display of the approaching solar system. Earth lay ahead, a blue-green dot amidst the vastness of space, but Varnax's focus was on the human fleet that had dared to defy the Council. They are foolish to think they can resist us, Varnax hissed to his second-in-command, a slender, multi-limbed alien named Sia. But this time, we will not underestimate them. We will crush them with overwhelming force. Sia nodded, his many eyes flickering with anticipation. The humans may have been lucky in the first encounter, but they will not stand a chance against the full might of the Council. We will erase their fleet from existence. Varnax's claws tapped rhythmically on the armrest of his chair as he considered the battle ahead. He had studied the humans, their tactics, and their technology. They were resourceful, clever even, but they lacked the refinement and discipline of the Council's forces. Still, he could not afford to be complacent. The humans had proven themselves unpredictable, And Varnax was not a commander who took unnecessary risks. "Prepare the fleet for engagement," Varnax ordered. "We will arrive within range of their defenses in 24 standard hours. I want every ship ready for combat." Sia saluted and hurried off to relay the command. The Galactic Council's fleet surged forward, its sleek ships gliding through the blackness of space with lethal precision. "Risk is the only thing we've got right now," Tay replied. "Let's get it installed on our heaviest ships. We'll need every advantage we can get." The human fleet was ready. Inside the ironclad, Admiral Tay stood in the war room, surrounded by holographic projections of the solar system. Every ship, every defensive position, every strategic option was laid out before him. Across from him stood Captain Langley, Dr. Carter, and General Mendez, all wearing the same grim expressions. "We've done all we can," Mendez said, his deep voice resonating in the room. "The fleet's as ready as it'll ever be. We've mobilized every available ship and soldier. This is it." Tay nodded. "What's the status of the quantum pulse generator?" Carter pulled up a projection of the human fleet. Several ships, including the Ironclad and the Tempest, were now equipped with the new weapon. It's installed and operational. But like I said before, we haven't had time for full tests. We'll be flying blind. "Blind is better than helpless," Tay replied. "We'll use the quantum pulse as a last resort. Our priority is to hold the line as long as possible." Langley, her face determined, spoke up. "The alien fleet will be here soon. They'll hit us hard and fast. We've positioned our ships to intercept them as far from Earth as possible, but we're going to need to use everything we've got to keep them at bay." Tay studied the projections. "We don't have to win this battle outright. We just have to make sure they don't reach Earth. If we can hold them off long enough, they'll have to withdraw. The Council won't want to risk too many losses." Mendez crossed his arms. "And if they don't withdraw?" "Then we fight until we can't fight anymore," Tay said simply. "We don't let them reach the planet." A silence fell over the room, the battle of Sol. The Galactic Council's fleet shimmered into view on the outer edge of the solar system, a colossal armada of ships that dwarfed anything humanity had ever faced. From Earth's orbital defenses to the smallest recon ships stationed on the fringes, all eyes were locked on the enemy's arrival. This was it, the moment that would determine humanity's fate. The alien fleet moved with the precision of a well-oiled machine. Thousands of sleek, advanced ships formed a vast, glittering wall of destruction. At the center was the Invincible, the Galactic Council's flagship, an imposing vessel several miles long, its hull bristling with weapons capable of devastating entire cities in a single blast. High Councillor Varnax stood at the helm, his eyes focused on Earth, as if the distant blue-green planet was already his for the taking. Inside the ironclad, Admiral Marcus Tay stood in the command center, his eyes glued to the tactical display. The human fleet, that was smaller and less advanced, had been strategically positioned at key points throughout the solar system. They wouldn't fight as one massive force. Instead, they would use guerrilla tactics, hit and run, ambush and deception. It was the only way to compensate for the sheer numbers and firepower of the enemy. "We're ready, Admiral," Captain Sarah Langley said from her position on the Tempest, her voice steady, though the gravity of the moment weighed heavily on everyone. Tay nodded. "All ships, this is Admiral Tay. We hold the line here. We don't let them reach Earth. No matter what happens, we fight until we have nothing left." The message was relayed to every ship in the fleet, and across the human armada, there was a collective moment of stillness. Everyone knew what was at stake. This wasn't just another battle. This was survival. It was humanity's last stand. The alien fleet moved with frightening speed, their ships cutting through the void in perfect formation. The first volleys of energy blasts fired from the Council's ships lit up the blackness of space, streaking toward the human defensive line. Within moments, the battle erupted into a frenzy of explosions and chaos. Human ships, smaller and less elegant, scrambled to avoid the incoming fire. The Tempest, agile despite its size, danced through the onslaught, its railguns firing with deadly accuracy. Plasma beams from human ships arced across the battlefield, striking the alien vessels and creating massive explosions in their wake. But for every alien ship destroyed, more took its place. The Council's fleet was vast, and their firepower was overwhelming. The human fleet fought valiantly, but they were quickly being pushed back. Ships exploded in blinding flashes of light, scattering debris across the battlefield. Inside the command center of the ironclad, the tension was palpable. "Admiral, we've lost the Horizon and the Valkyrie," shouted one of Tay's officers, her voice strained with panic. "Pull the remaining ships from Sector 6 back to the second defensive line," Tay ordered. "We can't hold them there any longer." As the battle raged on, it became clear that the alien fleet was driving a wedge straight toward Earth. The human fleet was being forced into a desperate retreat, slowly giving ground as they struggled to contain the relentless assault. Inside the ironclad, Dr. Emily Carter and her team were working furiously. The quantum pulse generator, humanity's secret weapon, was still untested, and the situation was growing more dire by the minute. The human fleet was being overwhelmed, and if something didn't change soon, the Council's ships would reach Earth. Carter paced the room, her mind racing. The generator was ready, at least on paper, but they had no idea if it would work in the heat of battle. The technology they were dealing with was far beyond anything humanity had ever encountered, and the risks were enormous. "We need to deploy it now," Carter said, her voice tight with urgency. "If we don't, they'll break through, and Earth will be defenseless." Tay, standing nearby, looked at the tactical display. The alien fleet was pressing hard, their ships swarming toward the heart of the human defense line. It was now or never. "Do it," he said firmly. "Activate the quantum pulse." Carter gave a nod to her team, and they quickly moved to their stations. The generator hummed to life, the air around it crackling with energy. Inside the ironclad, every system flickered as the massive power surge rippled through the ship. "Charging. Quantum pulse at 50%, Carter announced. 70%, 90%. Tay watched the display intently. The alien fleet was still advancing, their ships cutting through human defenses like a knife through butter. "Pulse at 100%, Carter shouted, her fingers hovering over the activation controls. "Fire," Tay commanded. In an instant, a blinding wave of energy shot out from the ironclad, spreading across the battlefield like a ripple in a pond. The quantum pulse wasn't a traditional weapon. It didn't explode or burn or shred. Instead, it created a shockwave of quantum disruption, distorting the very fabric of space around it. For a moment, the alien ships froze, their systems overloaded by the pulse. Energy shields flickered and failed. Weapons powered down. The sleek, advanced ships that had been tearing through the human fleet were now drifting, powerless, caught in the grip of the quantum wave. A cheer went up across the human fleet. The alien ships were vulnerable, and the humans wasted no time. Railguns and plasma cannons roared to life, unleashing a torrent of firepower on the disabled ships. One by one, the alien vessels exploded in brilliant flashes of light, their shattered hulls tumbling into the void. But the pulse hadn't affected every ship. At the center of the alien fleet, the Invincible remained untouched. High Counselor Varnax, his eyes narrowed with fury, watched as his fleet was decimated. His flagship, equipped with the most advanced shielding in the galaxy, had weathered the pulse. Now it was time to retaliate. As the human fleet pressed their advantage, the Invincible surged forward. Varnax's ship was a behemoth, dwarfing even the largest human vessels. Its energy cannons glowed with deadly light, and as it charged, it unleashed a barrage of fire that tore through the human lines. Inside the ironclad, alarms blared as the ship shook violently from the impact of the Invincible's weapons. Ty gripped the console, trying to steady himself as his ship's shields flickered. "We can't hold out against that thing," Captain Langley's voice crackled over the comm. "It's too strong." Tay knew she was right. The Invincible was unlike any ship they have faced before. Its weapons were too powerful, its defenses too impenetrable. But they couldn't retreat. Not now. Not when they were so close. "Target all weapons on the Invincible," Tay ordered. "We take that ship down, or we die trying." Across the human fleet, the order was relayed. Every remaining ship turned its guns on the Council's flagship. Railguns, plasma cannons, and missiles streaked through the void, slamming into the Invincible's shields. For a moment, it seemed as though the human firepower might be enough. The shields flickered, wavered, but they held. Varnax's face appeared on the comm screen, his voice a low, mocking growl. "You humans have fought well, but this ends now." With a gesture, he unleashed a second wave of fire. Human ships exploded in rapid succession, torn apart by the sheer force of the attack. The human fleet was crumbling. Inside the ironclad, Tay watched as the numbers dwindled on the tactical display. Ship after ship was falling, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. "Admiral," Dr. Carter called from the back of the room. "We still have one last pulse in the generator, but if we fire it now, the overload will destroy the ironclad." Tay looked at her, then at the display. The choice was clear. "Do it," he said quietly. "Fire the pulse." Carter hesitated for only a moment before giving the order. The generator hummed to life once more, the power surge shaking the entire ship. As the charge reached full capacity, the lights flickered, and the ship groaned under the strain. "Quantum pulse at 100%, Carter shouted. Tay clenched his fists. "Fire." The second pulse erupted from the ironclad, this one more powerful than the first. It spread across the battlefield, catching the remaining alien ships in its wake. Even the Invincible wasn't immune this time. Its shields flickered and collapsed under the strain. For a brief moment, there was silence. Then, with a massive explosion, the Invincible was torn apart. The flagship, the pride of the Galactic Council's fleet, shattered into 1,000,000 pieces. The human fleet, battered and broken, had won. The Battle of Sol was over, but the cost had been staggering. The human fleet was decimated, with only a handful of ships surviving the onslaught. Earth's defenses were in ruins, and the solar system was littered with the wreckage of human and alien vessels alike. Inside the Ironclad, a fragile piece. The smoke of battle had cleared, but the scars remained. Wreckage from both human and alien ships floated silently in the black expanse of space, a reminder of the cost of victory. Inside the Ironclad, the few surviving crew members worked to repair the damage, but the weight of the loss hung heavy in the air. Admiral Tay, exhausted but resolute, stood before the remaining officers of the fleet. Earth had survived, but barely. The destruction of the Invincible had bought humanity time, but Tay knew the Galactic Council would not forget this defeat. The next wave of retaliation could come at any moment. Dr. Emily Carter, battered from the strain of the battle, approached Tay. "We did it, Admiral," she said quietly, her voice carrying both relief and sadness. "We did," Tay replied, though his tone was somber. "But at what cost? We've lost so much, and they'll be back." Captain Langley, her uniform torn but her spirit unbroken, stepped forward. "We'll rebuild. We always do. If they come again, we'll be ready." Tay nodded, but deep down he knew that Earth's victory, though hard-earned, was temporary. The Galactic Council had underestimated humanity's resilience, but this fragile peace wouldn't last forever. They would return, stronger and more determined than before. As the battered fleet limped back to Earth, the people of the planet celebrated their survival. But the threat still loomed, and preparations for the next inevitable conflict began. The Toaster War had given humanity a chance to prove themselves, but the war for their place in the galaxy was far from over. And somewhere in the depths of space, the Galactic Council was already planning their next move. This short part reflects the aftermath and the fragile peace humanity has earned. Let me know if you'd like to continue with part 7.